Hey you guys, Phoebe here from Little Grey Box. Are you planning a trip to the United States? Matt and I recently found ourselves in San Diego and wanted to share with you some of our must-know tips for San Diego, California, and the US in general. It's important for travelers to understand the visa requirements before you set off on your adventure. Now, under the visa waiver program, some nationals may be eligible to enter the United States for up to 90 days without a visa for tourism purposes. If you are eligible for that, you still need to apply for something called an ESTA, that's E-S-T-A, and that is done online at a cost of US $14 per person. Now, to do that online, you just go through and answer a whole bunch of questions, which can be quite detailed, and they do require information like your social media handles. I always find the TSA to be some of the strictest airport security I've ever come across, and Matt and I picked up a few tips and tricks along the way that make navigating TSA that much easier. First things first, you want to make sure that your checked luggage has TSA approved locks. If you're not sure, just simply Google your luggage right now and check that it does have a TSA approved lock. If it doesn't, you're going to need to make sure that if you want to lock your luggage, you get a TSA approved lock. It's as simple as that. That way, if they need to get in and have a look inside your luggage, they can do that without having to break or ruin your bag. Next, you're gonna make sure that you get to the airport a minimum of 3 hours before your flight. That sounds like a really long time, but not in the States, because TSA are very, very thorough, and I've experienced really long lines in different parts of the country. Make sure that you're wearing shoes that are really easy to slip on and slip off, as you will be required to take them off when it comes time to scan your bags. Make sure that you're easily able to access things like your liquids and your laptop. That's going to help you speed through and not hold up the line behind you or feel flustered when it comes time to take those things out of your bag. You also want to make sure that your liquids are under 100 mils and meet the current restrictions. Be sure to check the TSA website so you are current on what that is. And those liquids usually under 100 mil and in a clear plastic bag, one little plastic bag per person maximum. When we arrived in LA, as that was our first port of arrival, that's where we had to clear customs, and it will most likely be the same case for you as well. Wherever you land, even if you're connecting through somewhere else, you have to collect your bags and go through customs at your first point of arrival. If you just arrive and you don't go to the baggage area and you don't claim your bag and you don't move it through, it's not going to get there. Even if your bag is checked all the way through, the responsibility is yours. If you're not looking to hire a car, you're going to need a way to get around. You can of course use public transport, but Uber and Lyft seem to be king in the United States. Uber is probably our preferred go-to, and that's simply because we already have it loaded on our phones, so we have that ready to go in Australia, and as soon as we land in the States, we don't have to re-register accounts or worry about verifying with a US number or anything like that. One thing to consider, if you're like us, you're probably not going to get a local SIM card when you're there. So just make sure if you are relying on Uber, you've got access to Wi-Fi at the key times that you're going to need it to book your ride. Matt and I always get a little bit nervous before we do it, simply because we're driving on the wrong side of the road and sitting on the wrong side of the car. Northern Hemisphere is wild. If you're really worried about it and you aren't confident and you don't think you've got what it takes, always err on the side of caution. Don't put yourself in a situation that's potentially dangerous. We had a car booked through Avis, and I would just say that we didn't have a positive experience with the person who took us through our rental. I just found him to be excessively rude. So I personally wouldn't recommend Avis based on that experience. We did also hire a second car through a company called Sixt, and that experience was fantastic. They gave us an upgrade. They were really nice. They were really helpful, and that's more of the kind of experience that we look to recommend. Now, whether you're hiring a car and driving yourself around or simply getting around on foot, you are going to need to be able to find your way around, and live maps are the best way to do that. Should you not have any data that you can use, or should you find Google Maps a bit clunky, which I do when you don't have access to Wi-Fi, we always use an app called Maps.me. I tell you guys guys about this pretty much every video we make. It's because it's my holy grail app. The only thing you need to make sure you do is star the places that you want to go to before you lose internet access, because sometimes I find that can be a little bit hard to find a specific place, and it just helps to have those already researched before you set out on your adventure. You guys, tipping is a thing in the States, and if you find yourself in California, you are absolutely going to need to tip a lot of people that you come across, and it's really good to know in advance what's expected, how much you should tip, and who you should tip. I will just say right up front that as somebody who comes from a country where tipping isn't the norm, I do find it a bit uncomfortable at first. I guess in a way for me it's almost confrontational, because I feel like I have to assign a monetary value to somebody, and I think that that person's really, really amazing, and I don't think $1 is adequate payment for the work they do. So I always feel like I'm undervaluing people, and I find that really uncomfortable. So if you're the same, just prepare for that. But one way I get over that is just to talk to people about it. I say, hey, sorry, I feel really awkward. Should I tip you? Is this a tipping situation? And Americans are so used to it that they're like, yeah, this is a tipping situation. Oh, no need to worry about it. You do kind of get used to it, and then you feel like a boss when you're palming fives to people. A standard kind of a tip at a restaurant would be around 15 to 20% of the total cost of the meal. The way I understand it is if that you felt your service was so terrible that the server and the staff deserved no tip, that you should probably speak to the manager about it. That way they can improve on whatever the problem is for the next people too. Now for your valets, something like $1 to $5 is a great tip. For your bellhops, you know, $1 or $2 per bag. You might want to tip your bartenders $1 to $2 per drink, for example. And Matt and I always leave a tip for the housekeeping staff too. Minimum wage in the US is notoriously low, so tips form a really important part of people's incomes, and we're talking about people that are trying to support their families. So $1 or $2 for me may not feel like that much, but to them it forms a really key part of their income, and it's always good to give what you can when you can to help others. Whenever I visit the US, I'm always kind of taken back by how friendly people are, and I don't think it's that Australians are unfriendly. I think we have more of a kind of a keep to yourself culture because we don't like to bother each other. I can just be standing somewhere and people will be like, hi, hey, where are you from? What are you doing here? Or, you know, even if you're, I don't know, at the airport, if you're at a restaurant, if you're anywhere, people are just so friendly and so chatty. I mean, we walk around with our vlog equipment all the time and nobody says anything. In the States, people come up, they're like, hi, are you a vlogger? What do you do? What's your channel? What's this? What's that? People are so chatty. Oh, this is a mistake Matt and I make every single time we go, and that's that we forget that the portion sizes are huge. We order these big meals expecting that, you know, oh, we'll just share a bit of this and we'll get this and that, and then these meals come out and they are monstrous. Sometimes we get to the point where we can't fit it all in and we share one meal between two of us. I imagine at fancy restaurants it probably isn't a problem, but just your regular restaurants, your run-of-the-mill stuff, that's where you're going to find those really big portion sizes. If you're planning on visiting one of the national parks like we did, you are going to need a parks pass. Now you guys, we went to visit Joshua Tree and absolutely loved it. If you haven't already and you're thinking about visiting, you should go watch that video now. But we had to get a parks pass sorted before we entered Joshua Tree National Park. It's easily done, but it is essential. One thing we weren't really conscious of on our last trip, and should have been because we should know better, is that there are a lot of deposits required, your security deposits. We didn't really leave enough money sitting in the bank that could be accessed on a card like that, and had to quickly do some reshuffling last minute to make that money available. So be smarter than we were. Make sure that you have enough deposits for things like your car hire, different hotels, and you don't want to tie up too much of your money in those deposits and not have any left for spending. So make sure you've got that balance sorted before you go. Now you guys, usually when Matt and I travel, we just use our bank card because it has no international transaction fees or local ATM fees. We do have to jump through a couple of hoops to be able to use it and get that benefit, but it's something we're willing to do for how often we travel. Now, if you don't have access to a bank card like that, or it doesn't sound like the right fit for you, a Travelex Travel Money Card might. We got to use one for the first time on our trip to San Diego, and there are a few different benefits that might be appropriate to you as a traveler. You load your foreign currency, your US dollars, onto the travel money card yourself. You can do that online or through the app, or if you really wanted to, you could do it in store. That means that you can choose a day that has a really good exchange rate and lock your exchange rate in right then and there. When you're really worried about international transaction fees, you tend to take out large sums of money and then you're carrying all that cash around on you, and it can feel a bit unsafe. With your travel money card, you can avoid those international transaction fees. You might be able to take out money a bit more regularly and not have to worry about carrying huge bulky bits of cash around with you. I always worry if someone steals my credit card, they could max it out. With your travel money card, they could only spend what was on there. So if you wanted to be a bit of a savvy traveler, you could be loading your currency on just a couple of days in advance via the app. Let's say you put on, $500 to last you 3 days or something like that. If you do get your card stolen or lost, there's the 24/7 support, and worst case scenario, somebody spends $500. Much different to having your credit card maxed. Matt and I nearly had a heart attack the first time we saw somebody in front of us turn right on a red light, you guys, but it is actually legal. So if you are driving, just something that you need to know. When you come to a red light, you do need to come to a complete stop. If it's signed otherwise and says you cannot turn right on red, absolutely don't, but otherwise you are able to turn right on red provided it's safe to go. Oh, hello to all my metric friends out there. You guys, you're in for a wild time when you go to the US, because let me tell you, they're on the imperial system and it's confusing AF. There's going to be no kilometers, you're going to be looking at miles. There's going to be no liters, you're going to be looking at gallons, and that's especially confusing at the petrol station. This is one that really stumped me and I had a really hard time wrapping my mind around, and that is that if you're driving a car and you need to put fuel, aka gas, into it, you're going to have to pre-authorize your card to do so. Whether you do it at the pump or go in store, you need to choose an amount to pre-authorize on your card, so you kind of have to guesstimate it. Do I think I need $20 fuel, $50 fuel, $100 fuel? Then you have to pre-authorize that on your card, you fill up, but don't worry, you'll only be charged for what goes into the car. Even when I was doing my very fanciest Australian accent a la Chris Hemsworth, it was not getting through. I think just the way we speak must be a little bit different to what our American friends are used to hearing. But you guys, there are going to be a few moments where you struggle to get your message across. Things like gas is fuel and jam is jelly and ketchup is tomato sauce and biscuits are not biscuits. That's something completely different. Just be aware, Australia, we have some bit of, let's just say we're a bit loose with our casual language. And words like bloody and hell are totally flying down here. That's just a positive expression. In the United States, no, not so cool. So if anything, just wind your language back, especially if you're from Australia, and be a bit more conservative. Now you're going to California, so you're probably going to think that it's going to be sunny the whole time, it's going to be beautiful and hot and warm. You guys, you have to check the weather forecast before you go, because while you might like to think it's a tropical climate, it ain't. It's actually more like a desert climate, and that means that it can be quite cool. It can be cool, especially in the evenings. At the very least, you're going to need a coat, a jacket, something to put over your shoulders once the sun goes down, and you can have those windy days, which make it really quite chilly. Now, travel insurance is always essential, but you guys, it's really, really, really essential in the United States. An ambulance ride, for example, can set you back something like $2,700. It's no joke. If you have to go to the hospital and something goes wrong, we all know that medical expenses in the US are notoriously expensive, and it could ruin you if you don't do it the right way. So please, if you're one of those people that just like to risk it, and what's the worst that can happen? Don't risk it in the United States. You just could financially cripple yourself. Now, if you're a frequent traveler like us, Matt and I actually take out an annual insurance policy, and it just saves us a lot of money. If you don't travel a lot, maybe that's not for you, but just make sure you take out a policy that covers you for your trip and all the activities you're going to do while you're there. Now, what I mean by that is that when you look on a menu, the sales tax isn't included, and you also have to mentally factor in your tip on top of that. We had an amazing time in San Diego, and there was never a point where we felt unsafe. That said, as with anywhere that you travel to, it's a common sense approach. Matt always likes to just research before we go, do a bit of a Google search. What areas should you avoid in that destination? Now, if you're looking for some more specific tips on the very best things to see, do, and eat meet and where to stay in San Diego, then you guys, you have to go and watch our San Diego travel guide. We will have that link below for you. We'll also have link below our Joshua Tree video. We had the best time out there, and if you do have the time and the resources, you should absolutely go and visit. It was such a fun road trip. We got to see Salvation Mountain. It was just a dream come true for us. We had a really great time. We also have some great written resources on the Little Grey Box website too, and we'll have those linked below as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Now, if you don't already, be sure to subscribe and say hello in the comments below. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Love ya.